Welcome to Night Whispers, where nightmares take shape and the roads you thought you knew lead somewhere darker. Tonight, we bring you The Midnight Diner, a story about a roadside stop that isn't on any map, a place where the coffee never cools and the customers never leave. Sit back, keep your headlights on, and listen closely, because once you hear this story, you'll never look at late-night diners the same way again. Every American town has one, that lonely stretch of highway with nothing but shadows, silence, and the promise of a neon sign up ahead. For most, it's a place to rest. For some, it's the last place they're ever seen. The Midnight Diner doesn't show up on GPS, you don't find it. It finds you. By day, it looks ordinary. Booths, coffee pots, pie under glass. But at night, the windows watch, the jukebox hums a tune no one remembers, and the customers, well, they've been waiting for a very long time. Some say it's where the lost gather, trapped between the road and whatever waits beyond it. Others whisper it's hungrier than that, feeding on whoever has the bad luck to step inside. That I know, because I stopped there once, and the diner hasn't forgotten me. So if you're driving late, hungry, tired, and you see that neon glow in the distance, ask yourself one question: are you sure you're the one choosing to stop? The night was quiet in the kind of way only rural America can be. A silence so thick it pressed against the car windows, broken only by the steady hum of tires on asphalt. Out here, the road stretched for miles with nothing but cornfields and tree lines to mark the land. It was the kind of drive that made you feel both free and uneasy, as if the world had forgotten this place long ago. Ethan checked the clock on his dashboard. 11:42 p.m. He was supposed to be back in town before midnight, but he had taken a wrong exit somewhere past the county line. His phone sat useless in the passenger seat. The signal had vanished 20 minutes ago, leaving nothing but a glowing map stuck in buffering limbo. The highway signs had grown fewer and fewer until they disappeared altogether. Now there was only dark road ahead and the occasional flicker of his high beams catching the reflective eyes of deer watching from the woods. He told himself it was fine. Just keep driving. Roads always led somewhere, but then he saw it first. It looked like any other turnoff. A narrow road splitting from the main highway, marked only by a leaning, rusted sign so weathered the letters had peeled away. There was no name, no route number. Just black asphalt stretching into the distance, swallowed by trees that seemed too close, too tall. Ethan should have passed it by. Every instinct told him to stay on the main road, to keep pushing forward until he found civilization again. But the tank was running low. His headlights caught the faint outline of what looked like a gas pump icon on the rusted sign, maybe once painted there, now barely visible. He leaned closer. Maybe it was just his eyes playing tricks. Still, he slowed the car. The road curved off like a secret invitation. And before he even realized it, his hands had turned the wheel. The tires bumped over the uneven edge, and the world outside shifted. The main highway vanished behind him in the rearview mirror, swallowed by shadow. Ahead, the narrow road stretched endlessly, disappearing into a dark corridor of trees. The air grew heavier, the silence deeper. Even the crickets had gone quiet. Something about the blacktop felt wrong. Too smooth, too new, as if it hadn't aged with the world around it. The yellow dividing lines glowed unnaturally bright in his headlights, unscuffed, unbroken. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. His gut twisted. He couldn't say why, but it felt like he had just crossed a threshold. Not into another town, not even into another county. Into something else entirely, and for the first time since the drive began, Ethan realized, he wasn't sure if this road would ever let him back. The trees pressed closer now, their branches arching over the narrow road like ribs of a cage. Ethan flicked on the high beams, but they seemed swallowed by the dark, illuminating only 20 feet ahead before the night thickened again that he checked the clock. 12:01 a.m. Hadn't it just been 11:42? His stomach tightened. Time moved strangely here, slow when he focused, too fast when he looked away. The road stretched on, each bend identical to the last. He swore he had passed the same crooked oak 3 times already, its trunk scarred with a deep gash that caught the light. Once. Twice. Again, the gas gauge ticked lower. The needle hovered just above empty. "Come on," Ethan muttered, tapping the steering wheel as if the car could hear him. Then he saw it. Up ahead, glowing faintly in the dark, stood a roadside diner. Its neon sign buzzed weakly, a flickering blue open, humming against the silence. The parking lot was empty, save for a single payphone booth standing crooked near the curb. Relief flooded him. Civilization. Finally. He pulled into the lot, gravel crunching beneath his tires. The place looked frozen in time, chrome siding dull with rust, curtains drawn tight against the windows, yet the neon insisted it was alive. Ethan killed the engine. For a moment, he sat there, listening. The night pressed in around him, thicker here than on the highway. He reached for his phone out of habit, still no signal. The diner door creaked as he stepped out, the sound too loud, echoing unnaturally. He froze. The neon buzzed above him, almost like it was breathing, and then, from the shadows near the payphone booth, came the unmistakable sound of coins dropping into a slot. 1.2.3. The phone began to ring, not just once. Not twice, but continuously, shrill. Endless. Demanding. Ethan's pulse hammered in his throat. He turned toward the booth. Its glass walls glowed faintly in the neon light, but the receiver hung in place, swinging slowly back and forth as if someone had just let it go. The ringing didn't stop. It only grew louder. The ringing clawed at Ethan's nerves, sharp and insistent, refusing to let him breathe. One hand on the diner's cold metal siding, he edged closer to the booth. Every step felt wrong, like the gravel beneath his shoes didn't crunch quite in time with his movement. The phone shrieked, echoing into the night. Finally, trembling, Ethan yanked open the booth door. The air inside was stale, smelling of rust and damp paper. The receiver still swayed gently as if an invisible hand had only just set it down. Ethan stared at it, every instinct screaming don't pick it up, but the sound burrowed deeper into his skull, unbearable. He lifted the receiver to his ear. Silence. Then, a voice. Ethan. He froze. His throat closed up, the voice was distorted, layered, as though it came from deep underwater. But it was unmistakably his mother's. The problem was, his mother had been dead for 6 years. "Come home," the voice rasped, breaking in and out, like static tearing through the words. "You shouldn't be out there. It's too late. Come home." Ethan's knees went weak. He pressed a hand against the booth's glass to steady himself. "Mom?" he whispered, his breath fogging the glass. The line hissed, crackled, then a second voice joined in, deeper. "Male, wrong road." Ethan's heart slammed in his chest, the diner lights flickered violently. The neon, open, sputtered like it was about to die, and then the phone went dead, not silent, dead. The receiver grew ice cold against his ear, colder than metal should ever be. He dropped it, stumbling out of the booth, nearly tripping over himself as he backed toward his car. The neon went black, the parking lot drowned in darkness, and from the diner windows, he swore he saw figures watching him from behind the curtains. Ethan stood frozen in the lot, his pulse hammering so hard it hurt. The windows of the diner were dark now, but not empty. Shapes lingered just behind the glass, not people, not exactly, too still, too tall, too wrong, their outlines bent slightly, as though the glass itself warped them. That he told himself it was a trick of the night, of exhaustion, of nerves frayed too far. But then one of the shapes moved, a long, slow tilt of its head, as if studying him. The air turned heavy, pressing on his chest, forcing shallow breaths. Ethan's body screamed, "Get in the car. Leave," but some colder, quieter part of him whispered, "They've been waiting for you." The neon sign above the diner buzzed once, briefly flashing OPE, before dying again. For an instant, in the stutter of light, Ethan saw the figures clearer. There were 4 of them, all standing in a row at the window, facing him. Their faces were pale blurs, features smudged as though erased. But their eyes, if you could call them that, were dark pits that seemed deeper than the night sky. Then, the diner door creaked open, just an inch. The sound echoed louder than it should have, like an invitation, or a dare. The stench of something old and wet seeped out, clinging to the air. Ethan gagged, covering his mouth, but he couldn't force his legs to move. The silence pressed closer, then, softly, from the shadows of the doorway, "Hungry?" The word scraped like metal on stone, wrong in its rhythm, wrong in its sound. Not one voice, many, speaking in unison. Ethan's hand fumbled for his car keys, slick with sweat. His instinct screamed to run, but when he looked back at his car, it wasn't there, just empty gravel. The shapes in the diner began to move. Slowly, deliberately. As if they had all the time in the world. Ethan's breath came in short, ragged gasps as he stumbled backward. The gravel bit into his shoes, the night pressing heavier with every second. The diner door groaned wider. The figures stayed inside, watching, waiting, like hunters who knew the prey had nowhere left to run. "Car," Ethan whispered to himself. "Car. Just get to the car." He spun, desperate, but the car was gone, not wrecked. Not stolen. Not moved. Gone. In its place, a hollow stretch of empty gravel, as though the spot had never held anything at all. His chest constricted, panic bubbling up in a violent wave. He turned toward the highway. Maybe he could run. Maybe, but the road wasn't there either. The black ribbon of asphalt that had carried him here, miles of cracked, lonely pavement, had dissolved into something else. Where there should have been road was now forest, dense, endless trees, their trunks packed tight, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The air between them shimmered faintly, like heat off pavement, though the night was freezing cold. Ethan staggered forward, clutching his hair, refusing to believe it. He had driven here. He had followed signs. He had turned off onto this road. He hadn't imagined it. He couldn't have, but the trees whispered, not leaves in the wind, words, his name, Ethan, over and over, overlapping, like a crowd whispering in a darkened theater. He stumbled back, nearly falling, his heart hammering against his ribs. His eyes darted to the diner. The figures were gone, the doorway yawned open, the black inside stretching wider, deeper. The choice was clear, the woods that whispered his name, or the diner that waited with its unseen watchers. Ethan's knees trembled. His chest felt crushed, his mind torn in two. And then, somewhere in that forest, a light. A faint glow, yellow and flickering, like a lantern swinging in the dark, and a voice, far away, but sharp and clear, "Come back." His mother's voice. The glow swayed gently between the trees, bobbing like it was waiting for him to notice. Ethan's breath caught, every nerve in his body screaming that he shouldn't follow. But the voice, the one that had carried him through childhood fevers, heartbreak, and grief, was stronger. "Come back, Ethan." It was his mother. That he staggered toward the tree line, his sneakers crunching the gravel. The air grew colder with each step, sinking past his skin and into his bones. The forest swallowed him whole. Inside, the light seemed farther away, always just out of reach. The lantern cast long, crooked shadows across the trunks, stretching like skeletal arms that shifted when he blinked. "Mom?" Ethan called, his voice cracking. The glow stopped, then, slowly, it swung toward him, and through the fog of trees, he saw her daughter, something wearing her face. She stood there in the clearing, the lantern in her hand glowing far too bright, spilling gold light over her pale skin. Her smile was the same, soft, tired, familiar. Her eyes shimmered with warmth, but the longer he looked, the less right it felt. Her lips moved a half-second too slow when she spoke. Her shadow didn't match her body, it bent in the wrong direction. "Come home, Ethan," she whispered, holding the lantern out toward him. "You've been gone too long." Tears stung his eyes. Every part of him wanted to collapse into her arms, to pretend this nightmare was just a trick of grief. But then, he heard movement behind her, not footsteps, drags, shapes shifting in the glow. Too many limbs. Too many eyes glinting faintly in the dark, and then her smile stretched, too wide, splitting at the corners. "Don't make me wait again." The voice was still his mother's. But beneath it, buried deep, dozens of other voices whispered with her. Male. Female. Child. Old. All tangled together, the forest pulsed with them, whispering, chanting, "Stay." The lantern flared brighter, the trees around them trembling as if alive. Ethan stumbled back, choking on his own breath. His mind screamed to run, but the forest pressed closer, the branches twisting like bars around him. The only way out was forward, toward her. The lantern's glow flickered wildly, spilling shadows that writhed like living things. Ethan's chest heaved, his mind screaming with a truth he didn't want to accept. That wasn't his mother. It had never been. The thing holding the lantern tilted its head, smile splitting wider, the skin around its mouth stretching until it looked carved. Behind it, the shapes in the trees shifted closer, dragging themselves into the glow. Ethan glimpsed them in flashes. A man in a Civil War uniform, his face hollowed out. A girl in a blood-stained Sunday dress, one eye missing. A sailor, drenched and dripping, seaweed tangled in his jaw, dozens of them, crawling, twitching, jerking forward like puppets on broken strings. The air was thick with rot and iron, choking him. The thing wearing his mother's face raised the lantern higher. "They're waiting," it whispered, its voice fracturing into many. "You're late." The woods groaned. The ground trembled, and from deep in the dark, carried on a wind that stank of smoke and decay, Ethan heard music, faint, warped. Like a calliope from a carnival, its tune bent and slowed until it was nothing but a dirge. It was coming from the diner. The shapes around him began to move as one, their jerks sinking into a hideous rhythm, lurching toward the glow. Their mouths opened, but no sound came, just yawning darkness, as if each was nothing but a doorway. The thing with the lantern stepped closer, and the light hit its eyes. They weren't his mother's eyes, they were black, bottomless pits, swallowing the light whole. Ethan staggered back, but the forest shifted behind him, branches knitting together like a cage. His only path was toward the diner, toward that twisted carnival music that seemed to pulse in time with his heart. The figures parted, leaving a narrow trail. A procession. An invitation. The diner door yawned wider, light spilling out, not warm, not inviting, but sickly and wrong, flickering like fire on the edge of going out. The voice came again, not from the lantern, not from the shapes, but from the diner itself. Feast. And with that word, the figures closed in behind him, driving him forward, step by step, toward the diner's gaping maw. The diner door loomed before Ethan, its metal frame slick with condensation, as if the building itself was breathing. The lantern-bearer stopped at the threshold, lowering its head in something that almost resembled reverence. The figures behind Ethan pressed closer, their silence louder than screams, their presence hurting him forward. He reached the doorway, the air changed, inside smelled of scorched meat, old grease, and something sweeter, like rotting fruit. It clung to his throat, making every breath a struggle. His body screamed to turn back, but behind him the forest pulsed with whispers. Inside. 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 Ethan stepped over the threshold. The diner looked almost normal. Booths lined the walls, tables sat neatly arranged, and a counter stretched across the back. The lights hummed, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. A jukebox in the corner croaked out the twisted carnival tune, warping with every note, but the booths weren't empty, every seat was filled. The customers didn't move. Some slumped against the vinyl as if asleep, others sat stiff and upright. Their skin was pale, gray, stretched thin over bone. Some were dressed in clothes decades out of date, soldiers, sailors, truckers, a mother still clutching a baby that had no face. Their heads turned in unison as Ethan entered, dozens of eyeless faces locked onto him, the air thickened. His knees buckled. At the counter, a man in a diner uniform stood waiting. His apron was spotless white, though his hands dripped something dark onto the tiles. His smile was sharp, too sharp. Welcome, the man said, voice smooth, calm. Wrong. We've been expecting you. Ethan shook his head, backing away. No, I'm not. You are, the man cut in. His voice layered with many others, echoing through the room. The last customer. The one we've saved a place for. He gestured to an empty booth by the window. On the table sat a plate, steam curled from it, though the smell was wrong, sweet and rotten, metallic and thick. The meat on the plate was unrecognizable, cut into neat slices, but Ethan's stomach twisted at the sight of it. The man's smile widened. Sit. Eat. Join. The customers around him leaned forward slightly, their mouths opening in unison. No words came out, only a low, hungry moan that rattled the glass. Ethan's throat closed. His legs trembled. He wanted to run, but every path back to the door seemed blocked, the air pressing in like walls. The forest outside was gone. The diner was all that existed now. The man in the apron stepped closer, setting a hand on Ethan's shoulder. The touch was ice cold, digging into his skin. Sit, the voices commanded as one. Feast. Ethan looked at the booth, the plate, the waiting dead, and knew, whatever he chose next would decide if he left this place at all. Ethan's legs locked, every nerve in his body begging him not to sit. The booth waited, steam still curling from the plate, the smell thick and cloying. The eyeless patrons leaned forward in their seats, mouths gaping wider, hungrier, their collective breath rattling like a broken vent. The man in the apron's hand pressed harder on Ethan's shoulder. His voice was calm, almost kind, "You've come this far. Don't make us wait." The diner pulsed around him, lights flickering with every heartbeat. The jukebox whined, its warped carnival tune slowing to a crawl. Ethan's pulse raced, the walls seeming to close in. He dropped into the booth, unable to stand any longer. The man slid into the seat across from him, folding his hands neatly, eyes glinting with something hollow. The customers around them fell perfectly still, waiting. Ethan stared at the plate. The slices of meat gleamed wet in the yellow light, thick steam curling into his face. His stomach twisted violently, bile rising in his throat. "What is it?" His voice cracked, barely a whisper. The man's smile spread, wider and wider until it split his cheeks. Thus. The lights flickered again, and for a moment, Ethan saw it clearly. Not meat. Not food. But pieces. Human. Hands, tendons, bone. All carved with care. Ethan gagged, shoving back from the table. "No, no, I won't." The diner shook violently, the windows rattling in their frames. The eyeless patrons groaned, their mouths opening wider, wider, until their jaws hung unhinged. The air filled with the sound of gnashing teeth. The man's smile vanished. His voice dropped to a low growl, "Then you'll be served." The customers rose from their booths. Chairs screeched. Dozens of pale, skeletal figures shuffled toward him in jerks and twitches, their mouths dripping with black saliva. Ethan bolted for the door, the floor stretched beneath him, the exit pulling farther away with every step. The lights overhead burst one by one, glass raining down. His breath tore ragged in his throat. He lunged, slamming into the door with his full weight. It didn't budge. Behind him, the crowd closed in, their groans swelling into a chorus. Hands reached, cold and slick, clawing for his arms, his throat, his face. Ethan screamed, pounding the door with both fists, and then, the jukebox stopped. Silence swallowed the room. The man's voice came low and final, echoing from every corner. Closing time. The lights went out, darkness smothered everything, and Ethan's scream was the last sound the diner ever released.